Alright, welcome back everyone. So we're just going to be starting the stream now, and just to give you all a bit of a recap in terms of what we're up to, we specifically have got a couple of things working now. So I'm just going to share my screen. So we'll start Supabase, and ooh, interesting. So let's stop that, and then we'll stop these containers. So what have we got so far? Well, we have a Supabase local stack, we've got a seed script, and we've got 2 migrations adding in a bunch of tables. And we can now create a feedback session, just like a Stripe session, and throw someone into that feedback session. We can do that via a request, so we're just dummy testing it with the API endpoint with some session config and some IAM configs. And one thing we probably want to do is, rather than have the person have to provide the input schema, we could derive the input schema directly from the feedback content to review. And then all the person needs to provide is like what the data is, what the type of feedback they want, and then what the output of each individual feedback item should be. So I think that's one thing that we definitely want to do for the future, is like if we can infer the input schema directly from that feedback content to review, then we can basically just generate the input schema for the user, and then the output schema is the only thing. So basically that means the person only has to put in, we could even remove order index as well, and propagate that. So I think we'll do that as well. And then that gets very simple, right? So you put in the data, you put what do you want to get out of the data, and then the React UI components are going to be generated on the fly to support that. And for anyone who's wondering whether these are my API keys, we are in luck. This is the Supabase local stack, so you're not going to necessarily be able to steal these API keys. It's just a local stack, which is quite nice. The next thing I'm going to do is we're going to set up the Docker container. So we've got a fast API container. And it looks like we're having issues connecting to Docker. Let me see, Docker compose. Cool, right. And we've got all of the automatically generated CRUD routes for, oh, interesting. So now that I've added servers, you get these 3 servers which have the base URLs. Oh, I guess that must give you the route then. Oh, so you can do like the local development server, which will call like the local route. Oh, interesting. That's really cool. So that's an OpenAI specification thing. Alright, sweet. So we've got like the CRUD functionality for everything. And just to run you through what was happening last time, and to run myself through, we can create a feedback session a little bit like this. So let me just go in and pull this. Insert on. Oh yeah, we need to get the right team, because these teams are created on the fly. Need that right team ID. So what this does behind the scenes is it creates a feedback session with a callback URL, and then we are then adding those feedback items in. And then we generate a UI in React. And you can see this is the dynamic form items. So this is the code that it thinks we need. So given what we've done now, and we also were having a look at the Stainless API. So if we go and have a look at Stainless API, Stainless API provides us with a way for us to basically do a TypeScript API and a Node.js API directly from the OpenAI .json. So you can see this is your OpenAI Stainless, and you get the OpenAI file. And then we've also got the ability to pull in and have a go at these, using this Node package. So I'm really curious to see how this works. So I think that's probably the first thing that we're going to have a look at in the next phase of tasks. The first thing I'm just going to do I'm going to say play around with Stainless API. We might have to get the GitHub Actions set up for that. So we do need to change this URL generator service, so I'm just going to go and hide my API keys for now because I'm actually going to have to dip into an env file. So let's go in there, and we just want to change the base URL to, we want to change the URL generated service, so we want to put like front end URL and then I just need to go and add that here, front end URL, and then it just means that when we have our feedback URL, so when we generate a URL, we're no longer going to use the, I can come out now because I've edited my env file. So we just need to go to the front end URL, which is just going to redirect, that's just going to redirect to the front end URL, and the front end URL will be localhost 3000, so it'll be localhost 3000 / feedback, and then you add on the session ID here. So let's go and start our next app. And in the previous session we were actually using, what were we using? I'm going to install this Node app as well. No replace objects, could not read from remote. Okay, permission denied. So I need to get access to this. Okay. So at the moment I'm just going to be getting access to this on a separate screen. So I've got to go and accept or decline, accept these invocations. This is installing that feedback flow node. Alright, let's give it a try. So maybe I could just do this on the home page. If I just make this currently into a use client, and then so we have to then import feedback flow like this, and then we make a new client. Yeah, awesome. So the base URL is set here. let's ask it to try and generate a feedback flow just from all this data. So let's take what we have in the API. We have this test.ipymp, and then what I'm going to suggest we do is we actually see, can we basically convert this file. So we'll say, so let's go into the page.tsx and we'll pull in that notebook file. Translate this into my client.feedbackflows.create, and we'll give it the TypeScript interface. I think Stainless generates some TypeScript interfaces for us, so this is what we need. So we get these feedback, create params. Yeah, this is everything, yeah. Just to see if we can do it on the front end. Because all I'm doing is translating that request. We just want to see, like, does this TypeScript package now work? We'll say, can you add this into my React code file? So yeah, I really quite like the Stainless API, where you basically provide it this OpenAI JSON file, and then it will actually generate you a TypeScript SDK. Let's have a look here. This is inside the user effect. Got to get the UUID package, npm install. Okay, so it doesn't know about the URL that should come back. What's in here? .message. Okay, cool. Let's try this out. So we're using the Stainless API, and so now if I just go to my home page, we should literally be triggering a feedback flow in the back end. Bad request. Cause policy, we're getting a cause policy. Oh, we need to allow for cause in the back end. Nice. Look at that. That is sweet. So now we're generating that request, and we're just still waiting for this to come back, I guess. Generated URL, object. JSON
Okay, let's go.
dot stringify. If I just run that one more time, I wonder whether it's actually giving us back stringified JSON. So right now we're just testing. We had yesterday the ability to generate a feedback session with the customer satisfaction survey, and right now what we're trying to do is generate that information directly from the front end, just in the user effect at the moment, just to test that. And we're using this Stainless API, which is a really great way of being able to just produce TypeScript and Node safe SDKs, and it uses this OpenAI JSON file, and when you're using Fast API, you actually have this file being generated for you all the time. Now there are some errors in Stainless API that I need to fix, but I think that's on me to fix that. We set up a shipface boilerplate, and you can see this is the output that we're getting back. Now, generated URL. Now I wonder why we had to JSONify this when it came back. So we waited for that to come back, but we actually had to, this is in a stringified form. So I just want to check what the type of this is. So we'll run that one more time. Pretty sure the type is going to be type of string, which shouldn't be technically true. It should be this feedback create response. Feedback item. Okay, so it is an object. Okay, cool. That's fine then. Okay, cool. Oh, we need to add some types. Okay. I'm just going to mute my, I'm going to quickly blur because I need to go and update the env file for this to be set to a base URL for the feedback flow. So we'll have a backend URL. We'll make that next public. And then we can stop hard coding this bit here, which is nice. Okay, cool. Right, so next thing that we need to do is I really want to just so we know that we can create a feedback flow, and we know that we'll generate these feedback items, and we also have the UI templates that are being rendered out through an LLM. So I think the next thing to do is let's already use a cache template, and we're gonna make one specifically for the for the article. We're gonna make an article component page and really make sure that we get the feedback item component right for an article, for an item. And we're also gonna work on the iterator today. So let's set up, because our redirect, our callback is going to be the session ID / callback. You'll see if you look in the here, this is the route that we need to set up. So we have this information here where we have the team that it's in, and so we need to create a route of feedback. This is going to be the feedback session. So if you see here, right, this is the feedback session, and once we have the feedback session, we'll then go and get all of the data from the feedback session. Okay. So let's go and do that. So we need to build that route out, which is here. So let's go do that. So we're going to have a feedback route. And because it's a dynamic route, we'll put this in square brackets and do an ID. And then we'll do a page.tsx. We also need a page.tsx for the feedback page. Now this page should render. So we're getting the page to be able to render now, which is good. Now what I want to do is, right, so we're going to need a couple of things here. We need to first get the feedback session from the database, which we'll get from the session ID. And we also need to get the feedback items for that session. We need to plug these into an iterator parent component. And then we need to potentially hydrate the React string within the parent component and pass in props. So let's see if we can actually still, let's build the feedback iterator first, because that will be important. Without that, we won't be able to use these feedback items. We already have something that's relatively standard. We also need to install, we're going to use shadcn for this. So we need to set up shadcn, in our local project. We need to build the feedback iterator component. And then we need to create a cached item, because we're using this cache for the UI templates, which is here, a schema hash. So we can we need to design a standardized input/output schema for the article, and that will allow us to reuse the same React code, because we'll just be using the same hash key. So let's work on that. Shadcn. Right, I'm just going to save my repo before adding in shadcn. Okay, cool. Right, so now we're just setting up the layout.js inside of the root layout. We've already got a font in there. Latin. We also need this import cn, and we need to suppress the hydration warning. Then we have this bit here in the body. min height, H background, BG background, font sans aliased. Configure theme in Tailwind. We've got to set up the configure in the theme. I wonder if it generated this. In Tailwind. Ah, okay, cool. We need to merge this Tailwind config.js into our original one. Oh no, it's the other way around. We need to merge the Daisy UI one into ours. Let's give this as a job for Claude to do. We'll say, so we're going to just say for the merging, we need to merge in the Tailwind config .ts, Tailwind config.js. I need to merge my Tailwind config.ts JS into a TS file. I want to keep the anything in the .ts file, as we would prefer to use shadcn for this project. So we're just setting up shadcn and doing that inside of Tailwind at the moment. And then we've got this here, extend existing shad. I'll cancel it here. Hold on, I still need to require Daisy UI, and I want you to generate the entire file. Yeah, here we go. Nice. All right. Combines the content of both files. Sweet. Get rid of this one here. Insufficient permissions. We just do rm tailwind.config.ts. Getting some root permission errors, so I might have to dive into that in a bit, but probably do that on lunch. Okay, cool. So hopefully we haven't broken Tailwind. We'll be able to find out in a second. Still looks good to me, it's still styling. So let's go to that feedback UID page. Right, we've set up shadcn. Let's import a bunch of stuff that we need. So in the prompt, actually, from this form generator and the modules, we actually already have this kind of iterator So we'll just say service.py, and we'll take that from the form generator and say, got our components. We'll say, I am working on a super dope parent generic UI component, the feedback items. And the other thing I think we can do is we can say, let's give it the whole SQL again. So I'm going to give it the folder this time because we've got a couple of, so we'll go migrations and can you help with this? Its sole purpose is to render these generic UI components that are feedback items. And then right now, so we want to render these kind of feedback items. Already take what is in the prompt and enhance it. Also tell me exactly what shadcn commands to run. Oh yes, lovely. Apparently the LLM's happy today. Cool, right, we'll run those first. Really getting some root permission errors, so I'm going to have to look at that in a minute. Component input already exists. Yes, why not? Cool. We'll call this feedback UI iterate parent UI parent. We need React hook form. We need frame of motion. We need hook form resolvers. Cool. All right. Let's just try importing that. Amazing feedback props. Handle next. I also want to generate, okay, so it's got an example. Let's just generate an example. I want to use Quill and generate an example of the feedback items using Quill. Can you help with this? Also, can you style my /feedback/ID route page so that all of the feedback items are in the center of the screen? Let's also say add on the ability to end a feedback session. We'll do that later actually. Let's just get Quill working first. I'm going to add an article editor and just doing that first. Let's change, I want to change these feedback items. Firstly, I want to change the feedback items so that they match exactly the same as this schema. Which is in the super base migrations. Hold on, we'll cancel and say the type is an enum and can only be article, approval, or custom. We are not using the type to do the rendering of different UI components inside parent. That is handled by, and we're going to handle that by the feedback UI templates, i.e. the JSON blob of dynamic form items. Okay, cool. Right. No. I just want to update my feedback UI parent with the right rendering and props to support that. Cool. Alright, so we're making some progress. We're trying to get we've got a feedback session that we can now access on the front end. But what we're doing at the moment is I'm just rewriting the feedback UI component. And rather than doing this, let's get the Supabase type set up. That will be much more useful. Supabase types we can do if I just blur my screen for a quick second. I can dip into another project and grab the same script that I would run in a different project to generate those types. So let's have a look. Generate types. Let's see. Right, I'm going to try and run this. This is the one we want. We want the local one. need to install Supabase. Oh yeah, just run Supabase gen types. Cool. Alright, so now we've got the ability to generate types, and that should go in. So Supabase, when you work with it, it gives you the ability to generate your types from the local database. So let me show you what I was just doing here. So let me just close down this other project from someone else, and then I can reshare what I was sharing. So what have I just been doing? Well, Supabase have got the ability when you work with their local stack, is you can run a Supabase CLI command, and that Supabase CLI command will basically generate you your types. So I can run this, and what you'll see is at the moment it's saving it here, but I don't really want to save that there. Now the reason why I want this is because you can get the enums. And so it's a really nice, easy way for us to just get the enum statuses of certain things directly from Supabase. And that's quite nice, because that means if I change this, I can just rerun this generate entities script, and it's going to update both the Pydantic models and the client-side types directly from Supabase. And we're just using the local stack for now. So let's just add that to the repo and say you must have the Supabase CLI installed and be logged in to generate the types for the client side. So that's a really, really nice thing that we can do. And then now that that's run, now if I get rid of this, I'm just going to go into the client, and you've got this types. And then you've got this one here, and now it's telling me it needs to select a project, but I think that's a lie because I just switched out the CLI. So if I just try running that again, generate entities, and there you go, boom, right, types are in. Now we can add those on to so instead we'll just say use these types, use these enum types as well to really flesh out the feedback UI parent, and keep it very generic and focus on handling the on submit, next, previous, and the HTML plus CSS for the container. Cool. And now you'll see, look at this, feedback item type. I'm pretty sure we can even, from the can we get the feedback item as well directly from the database? I think we might be able to. Let's just see if we can. Render form field. Feedback item has these order indexes, the input output schema. Can we get the feedback item directly from tables feedback item? That'd be feedback items. That's what you want. There, look, feedback item. Each feedback item has now this. Alright, sweet. So, argument of type JSON is not assignable to type of any. Let's try and fix this. The feedback items array doesn't match the expected type of the items. Oh, it's because of this. Just out of curiosity, what types do we get from this? If I just change this here. Missing the following properties created at, updated at, session ID, render field is missing in this. Render form field. We don't want to use this, I don't think. Render field, render form field. So we don't want to use the render form field, that's the problem. So we need to figure out a way of using this code here, and we need to generate it given this new UI component. So what does render form field do? It takes a feedback item and form props and it returns a React root node. That's a bit of okay. So let's change our prompt and because we don't want to use the feedback items, we actually have these feedback UI, these dynamic form items. this is what we're trying to figure out, is how we integrate this stringified JSX. I think let's give this to Claude. Previous index. Let's see. We've got a couple of problems here, which is fine. So one of the problems that we're experiencing is figuring out how to get a nice UI rendered. So at the moment we're not rendering anything. So let's do one thing at a time. Let's fix the rendering, and we need to do two things. We need to figure out how we're going to use these feedback UI templates alongside the rendering we get from these articles. Maybe what we do is we generate content render code. Let me actually have a look and see what this actually does. Need a nicer way to show this. So this is actually generating the relevant things for the output schema. Product name, new widget. It's generating the relevant XOD code. I think we don't do the form. That's the bit I'm confused about, is how do we go from this random bit of JSX into this, how do we mix this UI component that's a parent, that's going to know about what the items are, and then we have these dynamic items that are created. We obviously need to have this kind of stuff here. The bit that I'm struggling on that we can work through is where we do the rendering of these form fields and how we pass things into those if they come from a React string. So I think let's give that a problem to this. So we'll say feedback UI parent, and we'll also say like, here is an example of dynamic form items. I'm trying to get my my feedback items to be rendered from a piece of React code that is a string that is generated and stored in a database. We can say here is the current prompt. That's in the form generator service, which happens here. What changes do we need to make to either the API prompt, the database, or the client-side application to have a parent consume multiple feedback items with a dynamically generated UI in React that has been previously stored in the database. Perhaps we should store separate React components rather than trying to generate these React components from the and the entire file, then attach these to feedback items. I think that might be the better way of doing it. So rather than generate the entire form, we generate the feedback items, which are then matched to each feedback item. You're on the right track. Yeah. Content render component, user form component. Yeah, I think so. Then update this to use dynamic rendering. Where is the dynamic rendering happening? Render form field. Dynamic user form. So it's using this bit here where we make these dynamic content renders and then we insert those in. Okay, I can get behind that. We create a dynamic component. Create a new file to handle the dynamic rendering of stored React components. Okay, that's nice. So let's do that then. So we're going to need a dynamic component. I think we're going to need to barrel the exports. Creates a new function. Nice. We need a slider, select, switch, toggle, use toast, utils. Alright, we're getting there. Radio group, we've got a slider, we need a text area, we've got a progress. Input label, let's put progress here. We need a card, button, label, progress, radio, slider, text area. Maybe I should, if I do this, previous chats. That's quite nice that you can get to previous chats. Okay everyone, I'm going to go take a break and then I'll be back in about an hour, but I think we found a way forward, which is we're going to rewrite this code. So rather than generate the entire file, we will generate the form items for each individual file, and then we'll match that against the type and the input and output schema. And then that will then be used as a way to generate these individual React components that will then dynamically render. So I'm going to leave this chat window open because this seems like the best approach for now. So we've got like a dynamic component, which we're actually going to then use as a dynamic server-side false, so a client-side component. And then the data is going to get fetched before, which gets pushed into the items, and that happens a layer above, which you can see is happening in here, where we fetch the items with the API, get the feedback items, and then we do it that way. The reason why I don't want to attach it to the feedback items itself is we could have multiple feedback items, and each feedback item could be the same thing, the input and output schema, and so we only want to kind of generate unique components for each feedback session if we don't already have a UI component to support that. Otherwise we should always favor reusing components. So I think we'll still save it in a separate place, but we need to maybe make one row per feedback item, or at least have some code in here where we can easily figure out which feedback item has the UI for this. So that'll be what I'm going to do after lunch, and then hopefully we can crack that. All right, cool. Have a nice